That one person working all by themselves could build a business that makes not just $1 million, but maybe tens or even hundreds of millions. I know, it sounds pretty much impossible, right? But a whole new wave of entrepreneurs is proving it can be done. So let's dive in and see exactly how they're pulling it off. All right, let's just start with a number that's kind of hard to ignore. Over $300 million. That's how much the video game Stardew Valley has made in sales. And get this, the creator, Eric Barone, he made the entire game, the art, the music, all the code, all by himself. Now, this wasn't just some lucky break. It was a total labor of love that turned into an absolute financial powerhouse. And it's not just happening in the gaming world. Take a look at BuiltWith. It's a tech company that tells you what technologies other websites are using. Now, before the founder ever hired a single employee, he was pulling in over $14 million a year. That just goes to show you that this solo founder model can absolutely crush it, even in the super competitive software world. Okay, this next one basically breaks a cardinal rule of running an agency. There's a one-person design agency called DesignJoy, and it's bringing in over $1 million a year. The founder does all this with no employees. And you gotta hear this, 0 client meetings. He's built a system that completely gets rid of one of the biggest time wasters in the entire service industry. So you see these examples, and the big question is just obvious. How on earth is this possible? Right? How can one single person have the output of an entire company? Well, the answer isn't about working 100 hours a week. It's about a complete shift in how you think about building a business in the first place. But before we get to the solution, we really have to understand the problem. You see, most one-person businesses, or solopreneurs, they inevitably hit a wall. There's a reason these million-dollar stories are so shocking. It's because the normal experience is totally different. For most people starting out, this is what it actually looks like. Your time, it's your biggest enemy. You're the marketer, you're the salesperson, you're the accountant, and you're the one actually doing the work. This constant juggling act, it just leads to burnout. And because you're so busy working in the business, you never have time to work on it. So growth just stalls. You can't do more because there are only 24 hours in a day. So you really have two paths to grow. The old school traditional model says, hey, if you want to grow, you got to hire more people. But that brings a ton of complexity, more meetings, more management, more headaches. The solo CEO model, though, that scales differently. It's all about more systems, more automation, and this really powerful idea called leverage. So the secret, the real key to breaking through all those barriers is a concept called digital leverage. And I promise you, this isn't just another buzzword. It is the actual engine that powers these amazing one-person corporations. So what is it? Well, digital leverage is basically using tools, software, automation, code, repeatable systems, to multiply your output without you having to multiply your own personal time and effort. It's all about building an asset one time, like a piece of software or an automated workflow that can then go to work for you thousands and thousands of times over. Now, this whole modern idea is actually built on a classic business principle called operating leverage. This is what happens when a business has high fixed costs up front, like, say, developing a software program, but really, really low costs for each additional sale. Once you've covered those initial costs, almost every single new sale is pure profit. The classic example just makes this crystal clear. Think about Microsoft. They spend a ton of money upfront developing Windows. That's a high fixed cost. But the cost for them to sell one more digital copy, it's practically zero. So the profit per sale is huge. Now compare that to a company like Walmart. Their fixed costs are pretty low, but for every single item they sell, they have to buy more inventory. That's a high variable cost. So their profit per sale is much, much lower. Solo CEOs are building businesses that look a lot more like Microsoft's. Okay, so now that we get the core idea, let's look at the actual blueprint. You can think of this as the operating system that puts all that theory into practice, the thing that turns a single person into a super efficient organization. A lot of this new way of thinking was really laid out in Elaine Pofeld's fantastic book, The $1 Million One-Person Business. She actually studied dozens of entrepreneurs who were already pulling this off, and her work really built the foundation for the frameworks that we're all talking about today. So the blueprint is built around 5 core systems. I want you to think of them like the essential departments of any business. But here's the twist. Instead of hiring a person to run each department, the solo CEO builds a system to run it. Let's quickly walk through what each of these does. First up is acquisition. Now, this is not about the daily grind of posting on social media. It's about building a passive automated engine, like, say, SEO-driven articles or a killer YouTube channel that works to bring in customers even when you're not actively working. The big insight here, you have to stop trading your active effort for attention. Next is sales. For a solo business, this has to be repeatable and automated. Think of a well-crafted email sequence or a website that converts really well. The common mistake is trying to manually handle every single person who shows interest. The goal is to build a system that builds trust and makes sales at scale while you sleep. Then you've got delivery. The crucial idea here is to productize your value, turn your service into a repeatable thing, or create digital products. Because if you're constantly doing custom one-off projects, you haven't really built a business. You've just built yourself a very high-stress job where you're forever trapped trading your time for money. System number 4 is operations. And this is like the central nervous system of your business. It's about way more than just being organized. It's about reclaiming your mental energy so you can focus on the creative, high-value work. The biggest mistake people make is thinking, oh, I'll get organized later. A solid operation system is what stops you from burning out. And finally, we have finance. Now, this doesn't mean you have to go become a CPA. It just means creating a simple, clear dashboard that tracks your key numbers: revenue, profit, cash flow. The goal here is clarity, not complexity, so you can make smart decisions fast without getting lost in a bunch of spreadsheets. Okay, I know that all might sound like a lot, but you don't build it all at once. The key is to start small and just build one piece at a time. So let's look at a really practical way to build your very first system, like starting right now. I absolutely love this quote because it just nails the biggest mental hurdle people have. We think systems are for big companies with big teams, but it's actually the opposite. You build systems so you don't need a big team. The very first step is just getting the process out of your head and down on paper or, on video. So here's your first little sprint. It is so simple. First, identify one single task you do over and over again. Maybe it's sending an invoice or updating your website. Second, record yourself doing it. Use a free tool like Loom and just talk through the steps as you do them. And third, organize it. Just save that video and link to it in a basic spreadsheet. That's it. You've just created your first documented system. And that simple act, believe it or not, is revolutionary. It's your first real step toward replacing yourself with a system, not a person. You're building an asset that can be used to train a freelancer down the road, to remind yourself how to do something, or to eventually automate it entirely. This is the difference between working in your business and finally working on it. So let's end with this question. Looking at those 5 core systems, acquisition, sales, delivery, operations, and finance, which one of those, if you started building it today, would have the biggest impact on your business tomorrow? That's where you begin. Or